Okay, in this video clip we are going to look at the first 40 marks or so on the intermediate tier WJEC maths paper from November 2019. I've tallied up the marks and that takes us through to question 11. So mentally, if you get everything right up to question 11, then you're into that guaranteed C grade. So, and that's what you should really be focusing on, is trying to maximize your marks in those early ED overlap questions. Now, as always, the first page in the paper gives you two formulae, one for the area of trapezium and the other for the volume of a prism. But what we like to do is to add ones that we've had to memorize before coming into the exam hall. This one is where I usually put the right angle triangle work, so trig. So even though this is a non-calculator paper, paper 1, so it's exceptionally unlikely that we would get these here. The more times you write them out, the more likely it is that you're going to remember them correctly. So for a right angle triangle, those are your trig ratios, and also from a Pythag point of view, if you remember your Pythag as a squared equals b squared plus c squared, you have to make sure that your a is actually the hypotenuse, the longest side. So that is really important too. So there's some trig stuff. In this corner here, I tend to write any additional area and volume things that are good to remember. So they tell us the area of trapezium. They don't tell us what the area or circumference of a circle is. So that's useful to remember. Area is pi r squared, circumference is 2 pi r. So they've both got the same combination of letters and numbers, it's just the 2 is a multiple for the circumference and a power for the area. They can turn that into a cylinder with a radius r and a height h, and then they can expect us to work out the volume of that. So pi r squared times the height would give us the area of that. Over here, while we're looking at triangles, we could have the area of a triangle is a half times base times height, which is the way you tend to remember it. Doesn't have to be base times height. What you want is that that side and that side are perpendicular at right angles to each other. Okay, in this section, which could well come up on a paper 1, we've got some imperial and metric equivalences to remember. The first one links distance, kilometers in metric. 8 kilometers is approximately 5 miles. Then we have fluid, 1 litre is approximately 1.75 pints, and 1 kilogram of weight is approximately 2.2 pounds, and LB is the symbol for pounds. So you're required to know those, and also, which isn't a metric imperial equivalent, but it is a metric equivalent, you need to know that 1 litre is equivalent to 1,000 cubic centimetres. In this part, we work with time, so we need to put in the stuff we need to remember about time, and also compound measures. Density, mass and volume. Density is mass divided by volume, is an important one. Speed, distance, time. Speed is distance over time. And another one is the population density, which is the population over the area. Okay, in particular in numeracy papers, you could be tested on those. And then 15 minutes is a quarter of an hour, which is 0.25. Such a common mistake to write it as 0.15. 30 minutes is a half an hour, which is 0.5, and 45 minutes is 3/4 of an hour, which is 0.75. So those are all things that you can just jot down from your head at the start of the exam and then not have to worry about. You can refer back to them afterwards. The more times you write them, the more likely you are to remember them and not use them. But getting in that habit when you're practicing the paper is useful. Okay, so let's get stuck in. Question 1. Complete each row of the following table. The first row has been completed for you. So this is a directed numbers or negative numbers question. If the temperature at 10 AM is 2 degrees and it falls by 4 degrees, it ends up at -2. So if the temperature is -3, -3 degrees, and it goes down, so it gets colder, it's going to be 1 degree below that, which is -4. If we start at -4 and end up at -1, the temperature has risen, so it's gone up, and it's gone up by 3 degrees. And then finally, whatever we start with, if it rises by 4 and ends up at 3, that means that that must have started at -1. Okay, there's no marks for the units, although you could put them in. Okay, and this, from the mark scheme, there's just 3 B marks, which are the marks where we're just looking for that answer. If I see -4, you get the mark. If I don't, you don't get the mark. Question 2. Write 7%, 3/5, and 0.3 in ascending order. You must show all your working. If you don't show any working here and you put them in the right order, the most you can score is 1 out of 3. In order to work these out, what you have to do is to put them all in the same format. So you either want them all as percentages, all as decimals, or all as fractions. When I was marking your work, most of you were turning them into decimals. So 7% is 7 out of 100, or 0.07. 0.3, well, let's put that in the same number of decimal places, would be 0.30. So we have to deal with the 3/5. Now fifths are decimals that you should know the equivalents of anyway. 1/5 is 0.2, 2/5 is 0.4, 3/5 0.6, 4/5 0.8. But in case you don't, in order to turn 3/5 into a decimal without a calculator, what you're doing is a division. So you're doing 5 into 3. 5 into 3 doesn't go, so we have to add a decimal point and then add a 0 after it, and then we're doing 5 into 30, which goes 6 times. So the 3/5 is 0.60. So now you can directly compare those. If you wanted to turn them into percentages, that would be 7%, that would be 30%, that would be 60%. When you write them in order, you write them in the form they were given to you. So the smallest one is 0.07, which is 7%, followed by 0.3, followed by 3/5. So the way that that is marked is you get 2 marks for getting them all in the same format. So in my case, I get the 2 marks there for having them all comparable as decimals. And then the final mark is for writing them in the order. And the key thing there as well is that it's in ascending order, which is going up, but they've given you a great big clue underneath anyway. So smallest to greatest. So that's 3 marks for question 2. Question 3, bit of low-level algebra. Calculate the value of 3x plus 4y when x is -6 and y is 5. So we're going to replace these letters with those values. And when I teach this, what I say is that when you're replacing a letter with a number, it forms a bracket for you to drop the number into. So that's 3 bracket negative 6 plus 4 bracket 5. And when you're eliminating a bracket, you multiply. So that becomes 3 times negative 6, which is negative 18, plus 4 times 5, which is 20. Now you have to calculate the value, so you don't stop there, which a few did in the test I marked. So minus 18 plus 20 comes to 2. Simplify the expression 9g minus 4f minus 3g minus 5f. When I teach this, we look at identifying that each part of that expression has 3 bits to it. It has a sign, which tells you whether it's positive or negative. It usually has a number, which tells you how big it is, and a letter, which tells you what that variable is. So that is a minus 4f variable, and I've got another one of those there. So I'm grouping those in red boxes. Then I've got my g's. Now I haven't got a sign in front of that, and there's no sign in front of it because we don't bother writing it in. If there's no sign, it's positive. So my g terms is a plus 9g and a minus 3g. So I'm at plus 9, I'm taking off 3, I end up at 6g. And then to deal with the f's, I'm at negative 4, and I'm taking off, I'm going down another 5, which takes me to minus 9 or negative 9f. To solve the equation, it's a 2-step equation. The first thing I have to do is get rid of the take 7. I do that by adding 7. Now with an equation, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other to maintain the balance. So this side becomes 3m, minus 7 plus 7 is 0, it's gone, and this is 8 add 7 is 15. The 3 and the m are joined by a times. We don't write it in because it looks like an x, so in order to get the m on its own, I have to undo a times 3. To undo a times 3, I have to do the opposite of it, which is divide by 3. If I divide that side by 3, I have to do the same to that side as well. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, so 1m. 15 divided by 3 is 5, so m is 5. I don't know why I picked up a red pen for that. And then for part D, you get rid of brackets, so you multiply them. And you have to multiply whatever's outside the bracket by every single term that's in. So we do 4 times 3x, gives me 12x. And then I've got to do 4 times negative 5, which is negative 20. So marks for that question. There's 1 mark if you've correctly come up with minus 18 or 20, and 1 mark for the final answer. Of course I say that, but if you'd just written 2 down there, you would have got both marks. Similarly here, 1 mark for the 6g, 1 mark for the minus 9f. With this one, there's 1 mark for getting it down to 3m equals 15, and 1 mark for the correct answer. And again, if you'd just written 5, you'd have got both marks. And then 1 mark for both parts of that being correct. Question 4. The mean of 2 numbers is 7. The range of these 2 numbers is 8. What are the 2 numbers? So in order to find the mean, you would add the 2 numbers together and divide by however many there are. The way that I talk about that when we do this is that the mean is the total, add them up, divided by the count, however many there are. So I know the mean is 7, and I know the count is 2, so I can find the total. The total will be the mean, which is 7, times 2, which is 14. So my numbers have to add up to give 14. And the range is the biggest take away the smallest, so they have to take away, because there's only 2 of them, to give 8. So need 2, let's write the word, 2 numbers that add to 14 and have a difference of 8. When we take them away, we get 8. So the numbers are going to be 3 and 11. If I add 3 and 11 together, I get 14. If I take them away, I get 8. So the marks for that, you get 1 mark if your two numbers either added up to 8 or either added up to 14 or took away to 8. But if they meet both criteria, you get both marks. Question 5. Calculate the size of angle X. Hence, give the bearing of point B from point A. So there's two math skills they're testing here. First of all, your knowledge of angle properties of a triangle. That you should know is a 90-degree angle. It's got the box, and you should know that angles inside a triangle add up to 180. So X is going to be 180, take away 90 and 50, which is 140. So X is 40 degrees. So I know that is 40. Now I'm being expected to remember about bearings. Bearings, really easy to revise. All you need to remember is that they're measured clockwise from north. So where you have a north, that would be 0 degrees. And we want the bearing of B from point A. That means we're standing there at A and we're looking north, and then we turn through until our line of sight is looking at the point we're trying to find, which is B. So the bearing of point B from point A is that angle there, which is going to be 90 plus 40. Here I am in red again, which is 130 degrees. 3 marks for that question. A method mark for using your angle properties, adding those together, taking them away from 180, and an answer mark for 40. And then I'm looking for 130 degrees, or if you had a different value for X, but then used that correctly for the bearing, that could be a different value to 130, and you would get that mark then. Question 6, Venn diagrams. A group of pupils is asked whether they can speak Welsh, French, both languages, or neither. Their answers are shown in the Venn diagram below. The universal set E contains all the pupils in the group. So the way a Venn diagram works is everything that is being counted or measured or being recorded sits inside that box, which represents the universal set. So it has that funny little squiggly E next to it. So all the pupils who were asked live inside that box. If they speak Welsh, they have to live within the Welsh circle. So there's 2 different bits of Welsh speakers. There's these, and if they're in there, they can only speak Welsh because they're not in an overlap. If they're in the overlap, that means those 3 can speak Welsh or French. If they're not in a circle, it means they don't speak either language. So how many of the pupils cannot speak French? Well, those 8 can't speak French because they can only speak Welsh, and this 1 can't speak either. So those 2 different groups meet the criteria, they cannot speak French. 1 pupil from the group is chosen at random. What is the probability that this pupil can speak both Welsh and French? Well, we've just mentioned that the overlap will be those that can speak both Welsh and French, so that's 3. But the key word here that you must pick up on is probability. So because it's a probability, we have to write it as a fraction of the whole class. So how many people are in the whole class? Well, if we add up all the numbers, we get 14. So we need to have that as a fraction. A common mistake is to write that as 3 out of 14, or to write it as 3 in 14, or to write it as a ratio, 3 double dot 14. None of those will give you the full marks. Write it as a fraction. So 1 mark, we're just looking for the number 9 to get that one. And then for part B, we're looking for 1 mark if you're writing it as a probability out of 14, and 1 mark if you've got the correct total on top. If you've just written 3 out of 14, you just get 2 marks automatically. Question 7. Find the whole number which satisfies all of the following conditions. So it is a whole number between 1 and 40 inclusive. Inclusive means it could be 1 or it could be 40. So I could write that list of numbers 1 to 40 if I wanted to, but it's a long list, so I won't. We'll try and narrow it down. The number is a multiple of 4. A multiple means it's in the 4 times table, but not a multiple of 8. So it's in the 4 times table, but it's not in the 8 times table. 3 is a factor, so 3 divides into the number exactly. And here's the biggest clue of all: the number is a square number. So you're required to know your first 10 square numbers. Oh, sorry, square numbers, yeah, up to 10 times 10. So the first square number is 1 times 1, which is 1. Your second square number is 2 times 2, which is 4. 3 3s, 9. 4 4s, 16. 5 5s, 25. 6 6s, 36. 7 7s, 49. Now, my list stops at 40, so I can knock that one out straight away. So my answer is one of these numbers. So it's a whole number between 1 and 40, and it's a square number. So let's look at the other information. 3 is a factor of this number, so 3 divides into it exactly. Well, 3 doesn't divide into 1 exactly. It doesn't divide into 4 exactly. It does divide into 9. It doesn't divide into 16. It doesn't divide into 25, but it does go into 36. So if 3 is a factor of the number, my answer is either going to be 9 or 36. The number is a multiple of 4. 9 isn't in the 4 times table, 36 is, so my number is 36, which is also not in the 8 times table. So there's 3 marks there if you get the right answer. If you got a number which only met 3 out of the 4 criteria, you get 2 marks, and so on. But 36 is the number we're looking for. Okay, number 8. What is the total mass when 534 grams is added to 3.5 kilograms? So they're messing with units here. That one's in grams, that one's in kilograms. You either want to change that into grams. You should know there are 1,000 grams in a kilogram. So 3.5 kilograms is 3,500 grams. And we want to add to that 534 grams. When we do that, we get 5034 grams. So that one's grams, but that's 4 point, and that one's much smaller, so it's not that. So I need to turn that then into kilograms by dividing by 1,000, and that's going to be 4.034 kgs, which is there. What is the total length when 35 centimeters is added to 7.8 meters? Here they're testing the fact that you should know that there are 100 meters, 100 centimeters in a meter, so that is going to be 780 centimeters, which we're then going to add 35 to. 8 and 3 is 11, so I'm looking for 815 centimeters, which is there. And then the trickiest one, how many millimeters cubed are there in 4 centimeters cubed? So because that's millimeters cubed, we're talking about volume. So the easiest way to try and explain this is if I talk about the volume of a cuboid or a box. It's the easiest thing to work out the volume of, because you multiply the length by the width by the height. That would have a volume of 4 by 1 by 1 centimeters, which is 4 centimeters cubed. In millimeters, there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter, so that becomes 10, 10, 40. So the volume then becomes 40 times 10 times 10. So 4 times 1 times 1 is 4, and we'll be following that by 3 zeros. So 4 cubic centimeters are actually 4,000 millimeters cubed. So you've got to have a bit more care about how you think about how you can change millimeters into that. If that was area, if that was millimeters squared and centimeters squared, then you'd be doing 40 times 10, not 40 times 10 times 10. So these multiple choice questions, they're just B marks, there's no method, but for goodness sake, don't just guess them unless you really haven't got a clue what to do. Question 9. Express 60 out of 300 as a percentage. So hopefully you will recognize that if maths teachers talk about 60 out of 300, if you had 60 out of 300 in a maths test, your teacher would write that on the top of the paper as 60 out of 300, like that. So as a fraction, that's what it is, and then to turn it into a percentage, you would multiply it by 100. To simplify that a bit, you can either, depends how comfortable you are cancelling fractions. Let's just work it out by multiplying the top first of all. So 60 lots of 100 will be 6 followed by 3 zeros. Now you can divide by 10. Because we've got all these zeros, if I divide both by 10, top and bottom, it knocks one off. I got another 0 down there, so I can take another one off. I can't take off any more because I haven't got any in the denominator underneath. So that's the same as 60 over 3, which is 60 divided by 3, which is 20. So 60 out of 300 is 20%. Some people were asked a question. 40% of the people answered yes. A sketch of the pie chart showing this information is shown below. Calculate the size of angle X so that the pie chart can be drawn accurately. So from your pie chart knowledge and circle knowledge, you should know that the whole pie represents 360 degrees. And what they're telling me is, I'm not working with the angle, they're not asking me to measure the angle to find out how many people, they're asking me to find out what that angle is. We can't use one of those because it's not drawn to scale, so it's not accurate, so we can't use a measuring tool to do that. But they are telling me that 40% is what that slice represents. So I need to work out what 40% of 360 is. It's a non-calculator paper, so whereas I get frustrated when I see this method on a paper 2, this is what you do. If I want to find 40% of 360, first of all, find 10%. By dividing 360 by 10, which is 36. If I then multiply that by 4, or repeatedly add 4 lots of it, that will give me 40%. So 4 6s are 24, 4 down carry the 2, 4 3s are 12, and the 2 is 144 degrees. So we're into method marks now. There's a method mark there if I see that on your paper, even if you mess it up, you've got your method mark for showing you're about to try and do the right thing. And then an answer mark for the correct 20%. Same here, if I see a method where you were correctly trying to find 40% of 360, by first of all finding 10%, for example, and multiplying by 4, and the second mark is for getting the right angle, 144 degrees. Question 10, so this is the OCW question. That means we're not going to write an essay, we're just going to be careful explaining our steps and also careful with the units. So the diagram below shows a rectangle A, B, C, F and a trapezium C, D, E, F. AF is 7, so that's 7, ED is 8, and the perpendicular distance between FC and ED is 6. The area of the rectangle is 91 square centimeters. Calculate the area of the trapezium. Now I'm hoping, or certainly when it came to my class, not many of them did, remember I've seen that shape before. That shape is there. Okay, it's the one area formula they actually give you on the paper. Half A plus B times H. So we'll come back to that. I've got the A, I've got the 8, but I haven't got the B. So I need to find that length from somewhere. Well, that length is also forming part of this rectangle here. So the area of the rectangle is 91. For rectangle, I know that 7 times FC, which I don't know, is 91. So the area of a rectangle is length times width. I know that that is 7. FC is what I'm trying to find. So in order to get FC, I've got to do the opposite of timesing by 7, which is dividing by 7. So I need to do 91 divided by 7. I don't know my 7 times table up that far, and it's a non-calculator paper. So over we go to junior school bus stop method, or whatever it was called when you were in juniors. 7 into 9 goes once. It doesn't go into it exactly. There's a remainder of 2. Take the remainder onto the next digit, and then you're doing 7 into 21, which goes 3 times. So FC is 13, and I'm going to put the units on there, 13 centimeters. So now I've got everything I need for the area of the trapezium. So let's go back to my help sheet. Half open bracket A plus B, so it's the 2 parallel sides, 8 plus 13, and then it's times H because we've got the bracket, they don't put it in, but the H is 6. So I can work out what 8 plus 13 is because it's in the bracket, so we do that first. 21 times 6. Now when we're multiplying, it doesn't matter what order we do it in, so we could do half of 21, which isn't very nice, or I could do half of 6, which is 3. So that's the same as 21 times 3, which is 63, and then because we're talking about area, we're into centimeters squared. Okay, marks for that. There's a method mark for doing 91 divided by 7 in order to find the length of the rectangle, and an answer mark for 13. There's a method mark for plugging everything into your formula, and there's an answer mark for 63. And then the OCW, there's 1 mark for just being organized, so there it's clear I'm working with a rectangle. Here it's clear I'm working for area of trapezium. So org, and 1 mark is for units. So when I'm talking about length, I've got centimeters. When I'm talking about area, I've got centimeters squared. So that's broadly how those 2 marks are awarded. Okay, question 11. So this is the last of the first 40 marks of the paper. 200 young people are taking part in a conference held at Aberystwyth. One of the young people is chosen at random to be the chairperson. Complete the table below to show the probability that the person chosen lives outside the United Kingdom. Okay, so we're measuring probability, so all of those categories have to add up to give 1 total probability. So what have we got here? We've got 0.2, 0.3 is 0.5, 0.75, 0.85, 0.9. So what we're looking for is 1 minus 0.9, which is 0.1 or 0.10 would be fine, because some of those are given to 2 decimal places. So that was that part. And then how many of 200 young people live in Mid Wales? So Mid Wales represents a probability of 0.3. So we need to work out what 0.3 times 200 is. Well, 3 times 2 is 6. So it's definitely going to have a 6 in it. If that was 0.5, it would be half of 200, which is 100. So 0.3 is a bit less than 0.5. So rather than being 100 or 6 or 600, it's 60. Method mark for adding them up, taking them away from 1. Answer mark for 0.1. Method mark for showing you're trying to do 0.3 times 200, and an answer mark for correctly getting 60. So there you go. So that's the first 41 marks on the paper.